I filed the lawsuit against my ex on the very day she vowed eternal love to another man, each word of her vows echoing through my head like a haunting melody. The irony gripped me as I stood there, a silent storm brooding beneath the elegant chaos of her wedding. As I stood outside the courthouse, clutching the thick dossier like a lifeline, the irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah, my ex, was miles away exchanging vows while I signed the complaint that would bring her world crashing down. It wasn't spite driving me, but something darker, deeper, a need for reckoning, for clarity, for justice. Betrayal twisted inside me like a storm, leaving devastation in its wake. Each page in the file was an echo of broken promises, a testament to deceit. I was no longer the lovesick fool on the sidelines, but the architect of retribution. Today, as she pledged herself to another, she'd be served a different kind of lifelong commitment, one she wouldn't soon forget. The door creaks open to my apartment, a whisper of stale air curling up to greet me. Inside, the darkness hugs the cramped space like an old, bitter friend. My eyes sweep across the room until they anchor on the desk, chaos reigning over every inch of it. Papers, photographs, fragments of who we once were, and who we are no more, strewn like casualties in a battlefield I didn't choose. I step inside, the floorboards groaning beneath the weight of what I carry, more than just the binder in my hands. Clicking the lamp, dim, feeble light splashes over the desk. My hands tremble, nerves tight as guitar strings, as I push aside a stack of postcards, her handwriting on each teasing my resolve with whispered echoes of remember when. Each one I touch calls out with a soft ache, a flinch beneath my ribs. I inhale, exhale, anchoring myself with the smell of burnt coffee lingering from this morning. Each breath steadies my fingers, suppressing the tremor long enough to coax the chaos into a formidable order. Documents slide into place with the precise rhythm of soldiers falling into line. Messages highlighted, date-stamped, boxed into the iron walls of the binder, the lid of Pandora's box slowly closing. Every photo and message she sent to me, now damning relics curated into a time capsule of deceit, each piece fitting into an ugly puzzle I wished I never had to solve. This isn't what love was supposed to feel like. The innocence of laughter captured in a snapshot, now just another piece of evidence, a cold, efficient note in the margin that might have once said forever. Page by page, I tick each off an invisible list, muttering to myself, ignoring the way my voice cracks against the stillness. There's no going back from this, I tell myself. But it has to be done. It has to be. A mantra to keep my hands steady against the rising tide of my own hesitation. Somber determination threads itself through the mechanical shuffle of paper, each side blending into the fabric of my own regret and resolve. The last form slips into the binder with a satisfying click, the sound of a lock turning, destiny sealed behind cool plastic sleeves. I close it with a gentle finality, the weight of it so misleading for the storm it contains. My eyes linger on a picture at the edge, a blurry shot of us, unguarded joy dancing in our eyes. I turn away, pushing the image into memory's shadows. There's a pause, just my breath and silence, heavy in the air, a ceasefire before the next volley. I raise my head, finally letting the gravity of this moment land squarely upon my shoulders. Determination runs electric through my veins, an urgency underpinned by the tender ache of what was and could never be again. I won't let this define me, I whisper to no one and everyone. As I stand and move towards the door, the binder in my grip feels less like a burden, more like a shield. I step out, closing the door behind me, the latch clicking shut with resolute finality. The silence in the lawyer's office was deafening, every tick of the clock echoing in the sterile void. I sat on the edge of a leather chair that felt as foreign and unyielding as my decision. My fingers tapped a restless beat on the armrest, a nervous Morse code only I could decipher. Patterns of doubt flickered through my mind like static, jagged and relentless. As the door creaked open, a man entered, sharp in his tailored suit. "Good morning," he said, his smile cautious but professional. The outstretched hand felt like a lifeline, but also a tether, connecting me to the reality of what was about to unfold. "You're doing the right thing," he said, settling into the chair opposite me. His voice was steady, but his eyes held that flicker of uncertainty, a reflection perhaps of my own internal turmoil. What did right even mean anymore? In the tangled web of memories I was trying to leave behind, clarity seemed a rare visitor. The table between us felt like a courtroom, the place where judgment hung, unseen yet palpable. I swallowed hard, trying to remember why I was here, the steps that had led to this office with its framed degrees and air of immovable consequence. Breathe, I reminded myself, ground the nerves. His reassurances began to seep in, like a steady drip against the backdrop of my racing thoughts. We've gone over everything, the steps, the outcomes, he methodically recapped, as if convincing both of us. I searched his face for the conviction I was losing by the second. Could I really go through with this? Each word he spoke pulled me slightly back from the cliff edge of doubt. I nodded in response, though my voice seemed caught somewhere between my heart and my throat. Each second ticked on, louder still, charting the journey of hesitation across the expanse of my mind. Was there any true path untouched by moral ambiguity? What if? My voice finally broke through, surprising even myself with its tremor. He looked at me, pausing to let the moment settle. This is your decision, and no one can take that from you. But remember, it's not just an escape, it's a new direction. I wanted to believe him, desperately. With another nod, more resolve this time, I could feel a faint flicker of confidence igniting, struggling to catch. His assurances served as an anchor against the tempest of my worry, a necessity in the face of a future less certain, but nevertheless possible. A breath I didn't know I was holding escaped, and with it, a hint of the tension that had gripped me. In the sterile stillness of that room, the path, though fraught with moral complexities, began to emerge, a faint line on an uncertain horizon. Her happiness was palpable, infectious even. I caught myself nearly smiling before reality jolted me back, a cruel reminder of the facade she wore so well. The murmur of conversations and clinking of cutlery filled the cafe, but I was deaf to everything but the turmoil in my chest. The glow of my phone screen was the only thing illuminating this shadowy corner I'd claimed, distancing myself from the cheerful breakfast crowd. The photos slid past my fingertips like ghosts from a time I couldn't get back. Sarah in her white dress, all lace and laughter, surrounded by people who seemed to orbit her joyfully. Her laughter was captured in a freeze frame of serene bliss, a devious deception that burrowed under my skin. How could she look so pure, so untouched by the storm she'd brewed? I took a sip of cold coffee. It was bitter and stale and suited the taste in my mouth just fine. Every image was a slice of what could have been mine, what nearly was. Hours spent together, days bled into nights, weaving a tapestry I thought would never unravel. Her betrayal had been a quiet thief, stealing moments with stealth and precision, missed overtures that now landed with the weight of a falling anvil. A baby blue ribbon, threaded through her bridal bouquet, caught my eye. Our initials were entwined, a hidden signature in plain view. The audacity was brazen, bordering on cruel. Did she know she was tormenting me? Or was this another of her games? One last taunt before the inevitable? The thought of the courtroom loomed ahead like an executioner's axe, and a shiver chased down my spine. I saw the tremor in my hand as it rested on the cold wooden table. Was it anger, sadness, or the reckless weight of love that still held me by the throat? Perhaps it was all of them, mingling into a toxic cocktail I couldn't spit out. My phone buzzed with a message, my lawyer confirming details for tomorrow. The finality of it made the room spin, bringing my focus sharply back to the cage I was in. I glanced around, half wishing she'd appear, knowing I could say nothing that would steer this course away from collision. She was gone, but still haunting me, a specter with a heartbeat. The warmth of her smile, a light dusted across the photographs, was fading now. All that was left was the cold reality of what had to be done. There would be no more memories to sift through after tomorrow, just ashes of something that never soared. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, my heart a weight I could barely carry. The cafe door opened, a gust of wind curling around me as someone entered. It felt like a closing chapter, a whisper that the end was nigh. And yet, as I stood to leave, a part of me hoped that letting go would be less of a plunge and more of a release. The courthouse loomed above me, an austere fortress of glass and steel. As I pushed open the heavy doors, the mechanical whir and hum of the world outside faded, replaced by a stifling, anticipatory hush that enveloped the sprawling marble hall. My footsteps echoed, each step a reluctant drumbeat in this solemn march toward an irrevocable decision. Clerks move with quiet efficiency behind their counters, their businesslike demeanor contrasting with the personal tempest I carried within. I clutched the documents tightly, feeling the sharp corners imprinting on my skin like tiny reminders, insistently poking at the resolve I almost wished to abandon. The air smelled of old wood and fresh paper, a strange, clean scent that felt utterly foreign to the wreckage of my heart. As the clerk acknowledged me with a tired, perfunctory nod, a shiver danced down my spine. Her hands, practiced and deft, reached for the papers, and I hesitated for a fraction of a second, my mind desperately clawing at anything that might pull me back from the edge. I imagined these forms as open wounds, each filled with a part of me I couldn't live without yet couldn't hold on to any longer. With a resolve that I unearthed from somewhere deep within, I laid the documents before her. "Hear these," I mumbled, my voice barely a whisper, as if saying the words any louder might shatter me entirely. The papers rustled under her trained gaze, an innocent scrutiny unaware of the emotional carnage they represented. In that small moment, as her pen began to dance across the sheets, I saw my life unfold with brutal clarity. The signature was more than ink on a page. It was a seal, a covenant made with courage ripped from the clutches of fear. With each signature, I engraved another line in the narrative I could never take back, weaving a legacy of love and war inked in black and white. Around me, the waiting benches offered solace to anxious strangers, their stories visible in tense shoulders and nervous glances. In this shared space of silent struggles, I felt paradoxically alone, my life teetering on the precipice, unshared with any of these unknown souls. Yet, somehow, I also felt a kinship with them, united in the human burden of choices that unmake and remake us. The clerk's final stamp struck the document, a sharp burst of sound that reverberated around my head like a bell tolling a new beginning, or perhaps an end. My breath caught as I realized I was now defined by this decision, my future tied indelibly to its permanence. Each step I took away from that counter felt heavier, the weight of finality pressing onto my shoulders, turning my resolve into action, my fears into reality. Stepping back into the sunlight felt like surfacing from deep waters, gasping for air, yet somehow finding it lacking. I stood still for a moment, the world streaming past, and as my heart gradually steadied in its rhythm, I prepared to face the storm I had summoned. The courthouse doors swung shut behind me, sealing in a silence that was almost tangible, leaving me on the steps to face the unraveling chaos of the city buzzing before me. Each knot of tension in my stomach was a dull reminder of where I'd just emerged from, a place of judgment, both external and internal. I watched as a taxi swerved around a bus, the honking and revving of engines filling the air, yet none of these sounds seemed to reach me. I was submerged in their cacophony but somehow removed, like I was encased in a bubble that became denser with every second. People brushed past me, their conversations weaving around my consciousness, snatches of laughter blending with sharp, hurried tones. I was a ghost moving through their world, my form slipping in and out of focus in this relentless tide of humanity. Amidst bustling voices and traffic, I stood still, marooned in a sea of passers-by, now a ghost in the wake of my own choices. The sidewalk felt like it stretched out indefinitely, each step I hesitated to take causing the ground to shift subtly beneath me, like it couldn't decide whether to support my weight or swallow me whole. A man in a sharp blue suit shuffled past, a briefcase clutched tightly to his chest, as if it contained his very soul. His phone was pressed to his ear, his voice a low hum of urgent updates on some deal or another, oblivious to my stationary form. And I envied him. Envied the way his world seemed so clear-cut, his priorities guiding him like a lifeline through the chaos. With a mechanical motion, I pressed the button to stop the pedestrian crossing ahead, the red hand glowing fiercely, almost mocking me with its expectation to wait, to pause. I found myself reflecting on the irony, the hand signaling me to hold still, as if I hadn't been already, frozen in time, grappling with the echoes of that courtroom and its verdicts. Each heartbeat drummed with the weight of what lay beyond, that impending confrontation with a past I could no longer escape. My own past, now woven into the fabric of my present, was an unavoidable tapestry only I could see. A child's hand slipped into sight, a mother pulling them hastily along, their questions about ice cream and playgrounds bubbling over with innocence that stung. And I wondered, breath coming in shallow, uneven gulps, what it would mean when I faced those eyes so soon. The signal changed, the red hand fading into a welcoming green. Feet moved, whether my own or those around me. I couldn't be sure. And with each forward step, the remorse I felt clashed violently against an undertone of relief, that perhaps, in acknowledging, in deciding, I had started down a path that would set things right, or at the very least, lessen the weight. Yet with every forward motion, the road behind me crumbled, leaving only the dim, daunting reality of what I had to finally face. As I sat on the corner of my weathered couch, I traced absent patterns on the armrest, the fabric frayed like the nerves in my fingertips. My phone lay heavy on the table in front of me, like a loaded gun, its screen pulsing softly with a new notification that I couldn't bring myself to check. I knew who it was. The air in my tiny apartment was thick, unmoving, as if time itself had stalled, waiting for me to acknowledge the message that would finally tip the balance of this equation I'd been bound to resolve. With a deep breath that seemed to scrape my lungs, I picked up the phone. Scanning through the spotlight of unread words, my lawyer's message surfaced, succinctly brutal. Sarah has been served. 3 simple words that held the weight of an entire collapsing universe. Relief washed over me, sudden and cold, like plunging into a winter lake. It shocked my system into a heightened, breathless awareness. I could almost see it. The reception hall glittering with fairy lights. Her stunned face as she stepped into the dazzling light of her own celebration to confront this uninvited guest. It was all happening hundreds of miles away, but the scene played out with cruel clarity in my mind. I let out a long, uneven breath, feeling victory ripple through me. But it was strange and hollow, this victory. Somewhere between relief and a haunting quietness, it nestled uncomfortably, refusing to let me forget the bitterness stored within triumph's cup. This was no joyous occasion. I was still trapped within the walls of my solitude, a gentle prison I'd constructed out of self-preservation and gave the illusion of safety. The silence was deafening. My own thoughts filled the void, relentless and scalding, cutting through the euphoria with sharp edges. The euphoria felt hollow, a perfunctory triumph echoing through the silence of my empty apartment. The words formed on my lips without intention. I needed to say it out loud, make the thought tangible, but the quiet swallowed them whole, rendering my resolve to nothing more than a flicker in the overwhelming dark. Maybe this wasn't the way to reclaim my peace. Still, it was the action I decided on, a choice made in the thick of betrayal, promising liberation yet binding me to the weight of another's ruin. I could see the world moving on beyond my 4 walls, but here I was, waiting, marooned. Putting the phone back down, I noted how my hand trembled. The invisible chains that bound my heart to this moment were links I'd forged myself, link by link. And now, the silence that followed was my own doing. Slowly, deliberately, I wandered to the window. The street below hummed with indifference. In the dim reflection of glass and city lights, I found a resolve staring back at me, tentative but resolved. The night was young. The next chapter had begun, though I was uncertain where this path might truly lead. Her lies, a tapestry woven so intricately over time, now unraveled to reveal the bare truth I'd tried so hard to ignore. As I sat alone in the dim light, the weight of every word she'd ever said bore down on me like a suffocating fog. It was in these shadows that I saw clearly, each betrayal flickering to life like ghosts called forth from the living room walls. I can still remember the first time I caught her deception, almost laughably minor. She had shrugged it off, a fleeting smile gracing her lips as she insisted it was a misunderstanding. At the time, I desperately wanted to believe her, to preserve the fragile image of us, even though her eyes never met mine. It was as if my doubt had been a muted whisper, effortlessly overshadowed by her well-rehearsed charm. The pile of these tiny lies grew into a mountain I could no longer scale. Every little thing that didn't add up fell into place like pieces of a damning puzzle. The phone calls she ended abruptly, those mysterious errands that took hours longer than they should. Each one, in retrospect, was a scar on the trust one had foolishly placed in her hands. I wring my hands together and close my eyes, trying to block out the noise of a world that felt like it was collapsing. It was easier to remember the good moments. The laughter we shared as we danced awkwardly around the kitchen, the soft glow of the TV bathing us as we pieced our lives together on lazy Sundays. But those memories had become venomous in the wake of her deceit, corrupted by the knowledge of what lay underneath. At night, when the silence was all-consuming, I'd lie awake next to her, studying the curve of her back, silently begging for the truth to just rip itself from my chest and sever whatever remaining connection we had. My heart, traitorous and hopeful, refused to let go. But reality, indifferent and cold, had other plans. She used to tell me that her past had taught her how to build walls to protect herself. What she never mentioned was how sharp those walls could be, slicing through the very fabric of us until there was nothing left. Anger burned in me like a forgotten ember now fanned into life. It coursed through my veins, mingling with the sorrow until I couldn't tell where one emotion ended and the other began. There it was, the searing clarity of my decision, born from a bone-deep certainty that she had turned our love into a game I was destined to lose. Finally, all the lies, the betrayal, they didn't matter in the face of what I had to do, what I should have done long ago. The creeping dawn began to illuminate the room, casting shadows that danced eerily around me, mocking my newfound resolve. But I would not retreat. Not this time. As the first light of morning spilled over the horizon, I knew there was no turning back. The dying light of the day washed over the room, casting long shadows that stretched across the wooden floor like fingers reaching for solace. I leaned against the window, forehead pressed against the cool glass, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky burned with hues of orange and violet, a vibrant reminder that even the fiercest fires fade to black. I welcomed the tranquil exhaustion that came as the day exhaled its last, a temporary reprieve from the chaos within. But then, the silence was shattered. The phone buzzed on the table behind me, its insistent vibration pulling me from my thoughts. I tried to ignore it, my eyes still fixed on the horizon, but then Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I closed my eyes for a moment, a futile prayer for peace before tapping to listen. Her voice exploded in my ear, each syllable charged with a fury that felt like knives scraping against my skin. "How dare you just disappear like that?" she hissed, her words punctuated by jagged breaths that barely masked her disbelief. Each word was a fresh wound, peeling back layers of my resolve. As she spoke, the room around me seemed to shrink, every word bouncing off the walls, making it impossible not to feel the weight of her anger. Her voice, once a melody, now a cacophony of betrayal, challenged the peace I'd so desperately sought. The harmony we once shared was gone, replaced by this furious symphony that brooked no harmony or apology. "You think you can just walk away and that things will be okay?" she continued, the volume of her rage rising with every syllable. Every word made my chest tighten, a reminder of the bond we once had, now transforming into chains of accusation and resentment. I turned away from the window, my fist clenching unconsciously at my side. The sunset, with all its fleeting beauty, was forgotten, a metaphor for the ephemerality of the world I once knew. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room to silence her rage. But instead, I stood there, paralyzed, as her voice washed over me, each word enunciating her disbelief with surgical precision. In her raw, unfiltered monologue, I heard more than anger. I heard heartbreak wrapped in steel, the metallic taste of a love once tender, now turned savage. It would have been so easy to let it break me down, each word picking at the seams of my crumbling defenses. But even as her fury tried to claw its way into the deepest corners of my resolve, an unexpected determination flickered to life within me. Her anger couldn't reach what I refused to yield. And as her voicemail finally ended, leaving a deafening silence in its wake, I breathed out slowly, a lifetime of conflict compacted into one solitary exhale. I knew I had to face her anger, her pain, her refusal to let go, just as I refused to be consumed by it. The confrontation was inevitable, the path laid bare by our entangled emotions. My heart steadied, a steadiness amidst the quaking turmoil, and I accepted that what came next would change everything, whether she was ready for it or not. The lamp bathed the room in a soft, amber glow, casting gently wavering shadows across the cracked wallpaper. The only sound is the quiet scratching of my pen against the paper. In this moment, the world outside seems to fade, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the unending quiet. The letter I'm writing is meant for no one but myself, a silent scream compressed into ink, spread across the pages as a desperate plea for peace. In the hushed solitude of my small world, my thoughts flowed ink to paper, a testament to an era of hurt, now etched as closure for my own sake. Each word spills from a deep well of vulnerability I haven't tapped into for a long time, a vulnerability I've been afraid to confront. Yet, as the sentences unfurl, something within me begins to unlock. It's a strange kind of liberation, blending pain with a burgeoning sense of relief. I write about the moments we shared, the quiet mornings, and the laughter that seemed endless at the time. But alongside these memories, there are haunting shadows. The arguments that would erupt like sudden storms, the words we can't take back. It's all here, right in front of me, laid bare and raw. I can almost hear the echoes of our raised voices, see the tear-stained nights replaying in vivid detail. There's a certain coldness in accepting that some things are beyond repair. Still, as the letter takes shape, a part of me begins to warm to the idea that this doesn't have to be the end, just a transition. Somewhere between the lines, I dare to hope for healing, for a day when this gnawing hurt will simply be a memory. I pause, letting the pen hover uncertainly. Am I making sense of the chaos? Or am I merely spinning more confusion? This doubt is familiar, lurking just beneath the surface of every decision, every thought. But these words, however imperfect, are my truth. Forcing myself to confine them to a page is a step, perhaps a small one, but a step nonetheless, towards the light at the end of a very dark tunnel. As I continue, articulating my hopes, I can almost feel my heart lightening. I write to the person I wish I could become, the one who's learned to forgive himself and embrace the uncertainty of the world with open arms. I've been running from that version of myself for too long. The final words cradled against the page whisper closure. I lay the pen down and release a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Strangely, there's comfort in the silence that follows, a kind of acceptance I hadn't anticipated. It's not a resolution, far from it, but it's a start, and maybe that's enough for now. For the first time in what feels like forever, I sit back, knowing I've given voice to the chaos within. Out of this storm, a fragile peace begins to emerge,